Amina lived in a small, quiet village surrounded by green hills and tall trees. The village was simple, with mud houses and narrow paths where children ran and played, and neighbors knew each other by name. Amina had always been a cheerful girl. She loved the sounds of birds in the morning and the way sunlight fell on the river that ran through the village. She liked to watch the water sparkle and listen to the small waves splash against the stones. But lately, Amina felt very different. A few months ago, Amina had lost all her hair. It happened slowly at first, but soon her head was completely bare. She remembered the first time she saw herself in the mirror and felt a strange mix of fear and sadness. At first, she tried to hide her head under colorful scarves, but even then she could feel the eyes of the villagers watching her. The whispers were soft at first, almost like a wind moving through the trees, but they grew louder every day. Some children pointed at her when she walked by, and a few older women whispered comments that made her stomach ache. Despite all this, Amina never stopped smiling. She wanted to be brave. She wanted to show everyone that losing her hair did not change who she was inside. Each morning, she would tie a bright scarf around her head, step outside, and greet the villagers with a soft, "Good morning." She liked to think that her smile could make others forget about her bare head, even if only for a little while. But deep down, Amina often felt lonely. She wanted someone to see her not as a girl without hair, but as the girl she really was, kind, gentle, and full of thoughts and dreams. Most days, Amina walked to the river. The river was her favorite place in the whole village. It was quiet there, except for the gentle sound of water moving over smooth stones. Sometimes she would sit on a big rock near the edge, her legs dangling over the water, and watch small fish swim by. She loved the way the sunlight danced on the water, making tiny rainbows that only she seemed to notice. The river listened to her in a way that no one else did. She would talk to it quietly, telling it about her fears and hopes, as if the water could carry her words far away, to a place where no one would judge her. Amina also liked to watch the children playing along the riverbank. They laughed, ran, and splashed water at each other. She wished she could join them without feeling self-conscious. Sometimes she did, but most of the time she stayed on the rock, pretending she was reading the ripples in the water. She told herself stories about magical fish and talking trees. In these stories she was always brave and clever, and no one ever laughed at her. Even though Amina was quiet and gentle, the villagers noticed her. Some looked at her with pity and some with curiosity. A few were kind and tried to speak with her, but many whispered behind her back. Every time she walked through the village she could feel the eyes on her. It made her heart beat fast, and sometimes she wished she could hide in her small mud house and never come out again. Yet she never did. She kept walking, kept smiling, and kept hoping that one day someone would see her differently. Amina had a small garden behind her house where she grew flowers and vegetables. She liked planting seeds and watching them grow. She thought that growing plants was similar to growing confidence. Even if it took time, with patience and care, something beautiful could emerge. She watered her plants every morning and every evening, talking to them softly. "Grow strong," she would say. "Grow brave just like me." The flowers seemed to bloom brighter than ever, as if they understood her words. Her favorite was a small sunflower that faced the sun no matter what. She admired it for its courage, just like she wanted to be courageous. At night, when the village was quiet and stars filled the sky, Amina would lie on the roof of her house. She liked the feeling of the cool tiles under her back and the soft wind brushing against her bare head. She imagined herself flying among the stars, free from judgment, free from whispers, and free from fear. She imagined a world where people looked at her for her kindness and her dreams, not for her hair. In those moments she felt strong, even if the next morning brought more whispers. Amina's family loved her very much. Her mother, father, and little brother always tried to make her feel happy. They encouraged her to wear bright scarves, told her stories to make her laugh, and sometimes simply held her hand when she felt sad. But even with their support, Amina knew she had to face the village on her own. She had to find her own courage and learn to stand tall, even when others stared. One day, while walking to the river, she noticed a group of children playing near the bridge. They saw her and stopped for a moment, whispering to each other. Amina took a deep breath, smiled, and continued walking. She didn't run away. She didn't hide. Instead, she focused on the sparkling water in front of her. The river was her friend, her secret helper, and it reminded her of who she really was. She whispered to herself, "I am more than what they see. I am more than my hair. I am strong and I am brave." Even with the whispers and stares, Amina began to notice little things. Sometimes, a villager would smile at her when she passed by. Sometimes a child would wave, or a neighbor would ask her how her flowers were growing. These small acts of kindness were like tiny lights in the dark. They reminded her that not everyone in the village judged her. Some people saw the real Amina. She held on to these moments tightly like treasures, and they gave her hope for the future. Amina knew that her journey would not be easy. Some days were harder than others. Some days, the whispers felt louder than the sunlight, and the sadness weighed heavily on her shoulders. But she kept walking to the river, kept smiling, and kept planting her flowers. She learned to talk to the water, to the stars, and to the flowers. Slowly, she realized that courage was not about never feeling afraid. Courage was about moving forward even when you were scared. She also began to notice small changes in herself. She felt stronger when she spoke to people. She felt braver when she joined the children for a short while in their games. She felt proud when she wore a bright scarf that reflected her personality. Little by little, Amina was learning that her identity was not tied to her hair. She was learning that her kindness, her dreams, and her gentle spirit were far more important than appearances. One quiet evening, Amina sat on her favorite rock by the river, watching the sun dip behind the hills. The sky was painted with shades of orange and pink, and the water shimmered with reflections. She felt a calmness she had not felt in a long time. She whispered softly, "I am Amina. I am enough. I am brave." And for the first time in months she truly believed it. The villagers might still whisper, the children might still stare, and the path ahead might still be difficult. But Amina had found a safe place inside herself. A place where she was loved, a place where she was strong, and a place where she could shine, no matter what anyone else thought. And so, she continued her walks to the river, smiling at the sunlight, listening to the birds, and dreaming of a world where everyone could see the heart first, not the hair. Kofi, the young prince of the village, was known for his gentle nature. Unlike other princes who spent their days in grand halls or behind high walls, Kofi preferred walking among the people. He liked to know the villagers, to hear their stories, and to help wherever he could. The villagers liked him for this. They felt he was not only a leader but also a friend. Kofi believed that ruling with kindness was far more important than ruling with fear. He always said, "A leader should listen first, speak second, and act with care." Every morning, Kofi would walk through the village, greeting everyone he met. He knew the names of the children who played near the river, the elders who sat on the benches outside their homes, and even the farmers who worked in the fields. He remembered small details about their lives: the color of a child's favorite toy, the crops a farmer liked to grow, or the illness a neighbor's goat had. People admired his attention and patience. They trusted him not because he was a prince but because he truly cared. One bright afternoon, Kofi was walking along the path that led to the river. The sun shone warmly on his face, and a soft breeze rustled the leaves of the trees. Birds sang from high branches, and the faint sound of children laughing came from the village square. Kofi was walking slowly, enjoying the calm, when he noticed someone sitting on a large rock near the river. It was Amina. She sat quietly, her head bent, her hands folded in her lap. She did not move even when children ran past her or when villagers walked along the path. She seemed lost in her own thoughts. Kofi stopped for a moment, studying her quietly. There was something about her that caught his attention. Perhaps it was the way she held herself even in silence, or the way her eyes reflected a quiet sadness mixed with strength. Most villagers might have looked past her, but Kofi noticed the courage in her stillness. He could tell she carried a weight that no one else knew. He felt drawn to her, as if he wanted to know her story, to understand her pain, and perhaps to help her carry it. He took a few more steps closer and watched her from a distance. Amina's bare head shone softly in the sunlight, and her scarf rested loosely around her shoulders. She did not notice him yet, and he did not want to startle her. Kofi often believed that the best way to help someone was to first understand them. He watched her for several minutes, seeing how she interacted with the river, how her fingers lightly touched the water, and how she seemed to listen to the soft sounds of nature. He thought it was remarkable that someone so small in the village could have such a deep connection with the world around her. Kofi remembered hearing whispers about Amina. Some villagers said unkind things and some avoided speaking to her. He had never met her before, but he had noticed how others treated her differently. Some people feared saying the wrong thing, others laughed quietly behind her back. Kofi did not like such behavior. He believed that everyone deserved respect, and he felt that Amina, in particular, deserved kindness and understanding. After a few moments, Kofi approached slowly, not wanting to frighten her. He cleared his throat softly, and Amina looked up quickly, her eyes widening in surprise. She blinked several times as if trying to recognize him. "Hello," Kofi said gently. "I am Kofi." His voice was soft, calm, and kind. Amina nodded shyly, unsure what to say. She had never spoken to a prince before. She had always imagined them as distant, serious, or strict. But Kofi seemed different. He seemed warm and real, someone who wanted to talk, not command. "Are you okay?" Kofi asked, sitting on a nearby rock at a respectful distance. His eyes were calm and curious, not judging. Amina felt a strange mixture of relief and nervousness. Most people either avoided her or stared without speaking. Here was someone asking about her feelings. She hesitated before answering, her voice soft. "I'm fine." She did not want to seem weak, but she also felt that Kofi might understand. Kofi nodded slowly. "I see you often by the river," he said. "It seems like a peaceful place. Do you like it here?" Amina looked at the river and nodded. "Yes, it's quiet," she said. "It's the only place I feel calm." Kofi smiled slightly. "I understand," he said. "Sometimes the world can be loud and heavy. The river seems like a good friend. It listens, doesn't it?" Amina blinked, surprised at how well he seemed to understand her. She nodded again. "Yes, it listens," she whispered. For the next few minutes, they sat in silence, listening to the water and the sounds of the village in the distance. Kofi did not rush her, and Amina felt safe in his presence. She felt like she could be herself without fear. Finally she spoke, her voice small but steady. "People, they look at me differently. They whisper, and sometimes, I feel alone." Kofi listened carefully, nodding. He did not interrupt, but his eyes showed that he cared. "I can see why that would hurt," he said softly. "But I want you to know that not everyone thinks like that. Some people, like me, want to see the person inside, not just what they look like." Amina's eyes widened slightly. She had never heard such words from anyone in the village. She wanted to believe him, but a part of her was cautious. People often said kind things but didn't follow through. Yet Kofi seemed different. He was calm, patient, and genuinely interested in her feelings. She felt a small spark of hope in her chest. Perhaps someone could see her for who she really was. Kofi asked her about her life in the village, her family, and her favorite things. Amina found herself talking more than she had in weeks. She spoke about the flowers in her garden, the fish in the river, and the stories she told herself when she felt lonely. Kofi listened to every word with care, asking gentle questions and encouraging her to share. For the first time, Amina felt like she mattered, not because of her hair or her looks but because of her thoughts, feelings, and courage. As the sun began to dip toward the horizon, Kofi stood and offered his hand to Amina. "Would you like to walk with me through the village?" he asked. Amina hesitated. People were everywhere and she worried about the whispers and stares. But something in Kofi's calm presence made her feel brave. She took his hand gently, and together they walked along the village paths. People stared, but Kofi's calm confidence made them quiet. He did not rush or speak harshly to anyone. He simply walked beside her, showing that she had someone by her side who cared. Amina noticed small things she had never paid attention to before: the sound of the children playing, the smell of fresh bread from the baker's stall, and the way the sun painted the walls of the houses in golden light. With Kofi walking beside her, the village felt less frightening. She felt like she belonged, even if only for a little while. By the time they reached the edge of the village, Amina felt a small courage growing inside her, a courage she had not felt in many weeks. Before they parted, Kofi smiled at her. "Remember," he said gently, "you are stronger than you think and your heart is what truly matters. People who cannot see that are not worth your worry. But I see it and I hope you can begin to see it too." Amina felt warmth spread through her chest. She nodded shyly, realizing that someone, at least one person, understood her and valued her courage. The day of the village festival had finally arrived. It was the most colorful day of the year, when villagers gathered to celebrate the harvest and the beauty of their home. Stalls were lined with bright cloths, fresh fruits, and handmade crafts. Children ran around laughing, chasing each other while women danced lightly to the drumbeats, and men carried baskets of food to share. The air was filled with the smell of roasted corn and sweet cakes, and the sound of music mixed with the laughter of everyone enjoying the celebration. It was a day when the entire village came together to be happy. Amina had been looking forward to the festival for a long time, but now that it had arrived, she felt nervous. She had watched the preparations from her small window at home, imagining herself joining the dancing and games. But as she approached the festival from the edge of the village, she suddenly felt afraid. The crowd was large and people were talking, laughing, and moving around quickly. Amina could hear whispers as soon as she stepped near the first few villagers. She tried to keep her head down, wishing she could disappear into the earth. Her bare head made her feel exposed, and she feared the usual stares and judgment. She paused behind a wooden stall, clutching the edge for support, and looked at the bright colors, the dancing, and the happy faces. Her heart wanted to join in, but her mind reminded her of the whispers, the looks, and the laughter that sometimes followed her. For a moment she considered turning back and hiding at home. She imagined herself curled up in her bed, the world outside safe and quiet, with only her thoughts for company. But even as she thought this, part of her wanted to be brave, to feel included, to enjoy the festival like everyone else. Kofi had been moving through the festival, greeting villagers, listening to their stories and checking that everything was going well. He noticed Amina standing at the edge of the crowd, her body tense, her eyes downcast, and her hands nervously twisting her scarf. He remembered the afternoons by the river when they had spoken and laughed quietly, and he could see that she was still hesitant, still uncertain, and still afraid of being judged. Kofi's heart went out to her. He knew she was shy, but he also knew the courage that lived quietly in her heart. He wanted to help her feel safe even here in the middle of a large crowd. Without hesitation, Kofi walked over to Amina. His steps were calm but purposeful. The crowd seemed to part slightly as he moved, not because he commanded it, but because people respected him. When he reached her, he smiled gently and spoke in a soft, kind voice. "Amina," he said, "will you dance with me?" He held out his hand, offering her not only the gesture of a dance but also the promise of support and courage. Amina froze. She had never been asked to dance in the center of the village before. Her mind raced with questions. Would people stare? Would they laugh? Would she stumble and make a fool of herself? Her heart pounded in her chest, and she felt a mixture of excitement, fear, and disbelief. Slowly she looked up at Kofi. The calmness in his eyes, the genuine smile, and the way he patiently waited for her answer made her feel safe. She blinked a few times and whispered, I don't know if I can." Kofi nodded, still holding out his hand. "I will be with you. You don't have to be afraid. You are stronger than you think," he said. His words were simple but they carried power. They reminded Amina of the afternoons by the river when she had first begun to feel courage. She felt a small spark of hope inside her chest. Maybe she could do this. Maybe she could step out of her fear and join the dance. Taking a deep breath, Amina placed her hand in Kofi's. The touch was warm and steady, and it gave her a feeling of confidence she had not felt in a long time. Slowly, she let him lead her into the middle of the festival square. People paused for a moment to notice them, but instead of whispers or laughter, the music seemed to swell, and the villagers watched quietly. Kofi's calm presence seemed to make everyone else pause. Amina felt the eyes of the crowd, but for the first time she did not shrink. She felt supported, as if she were walking not alone but with someone who believed in her. As they began to move with the music, Amina realized that dancing was easier than she had imagined. She could feel the rhythm in her feet, the wind in her face, and the warmth of the sun on her bare head. Kofi guided her gently and she matched his steps as best she could. At first, her movements were careful and hesitant, but as she focused on the music and the feeling of joy, her body relaxed. The crowd's whispers faded into the background, and she began to notice something she had not expected: smiles. Some villagers clapped their hands. Some children watched with wide eyes, impressed by her bravery. She realized that not everyone was unkind. Some were simply amazed by her courage to step forward. For a moment, Amina forgot her fears. She laughed softly, a sound that felt like it belonged to the river and the sun. Kofi laughed with her, not mockingly but joyfully, encouraging her to enjoy the moment. Step by step, she became more confident, more aware of her own strength, and more alive in the midst of the celebration. People began to cheer quietly, moved by the sight of the young girl dancing with the prince, her bare head held high, her smile bright, her heart shining through every movement. The dance continued for several minutes, and with every step, Amina felt lighter. She remembered her walks to the river, the way the water had always listened to her, the way she had spoken to the flowers, and the courage she had slowly learned to carry in her heart. Now that courage had come to life in front of the entire village. She realized that being seen, even by many, was not as frightening as she had imagined. With Kofi by her side, she could face the world and still feel safe. As the music slowed and the dance came to an end, Amina felt a mixture of relief, pride, and happiness. She had done something she had never thought possible. She had stepped into the crowd, faced the whispers, and found joy instead of fear. Kofi smiled at her, his eyes shining with pride and kindness. "See," he said softly. "You are braver than you know." Amina's chest swelled with warmth. She could hardly believe the transformation she had just experienced. The villagers began to clap more loudly, not out of mockery but out of admiration. Some came closer to speak kind words to Amina, offering congratulations on her courage. Even the children who had once pointed and whispered now looked at her with curiosity and respect. Amina realized that courage could change how people saw her. It did not happen instantly, but it could begin with a single step, a single choice, and a single person who believed in you. Later that afternoon, when the festival quieted down and the sun began to set, Amina and Kofi walked along the village paths together. She felt lighter, freer, and stronger than she had felt in months. She remembered the afternoons by the river, the gentle guidance of Kofi, and the small courage she had carried inside herself. She understood that fear might come again, that whispers might return, but she also knew that she could face them. Courage, she realized, was not the absence of fear, but the willingness to step forward despite it. The village festival was alive with colors, music, and laughter. People moved through the streets, carrying baskets of food, decorations, and handmade crafts. Children ran in every direction, their laughter echoing in the warm afternoon air. The drums beat steadily, and women clapped their hands in rhythm while the men played flutes. It was a day filled with joy, yet Amina felt nervous as she stood at the edge of the square, unsure if she could truly enjoy herself. She remembered the whispers, the stares, and the cautious glances from some villagers. Her bare head made her feel exposed, and the fear that had lived inside her for so long returned for a moment. Kofi noticed her hesitation immediately. He had been walking among the villagers, smiling and greeting them warmly, and when he saw Amina at the edge of the crowd, he felt a pang of concern. She had come so far in her courage, but the size of the festival and the number of people could be overwhelming. Kofi wanted to help her feel safe, to give her the chance to enjoy the day without fear. Without a word, he stepped closer, his movements calm and gentle, and offered his hand again. Amina looked at him, her eyes wide. She had danced with him briefly before, but now, in front of the entire village, she felt both excited and frightened. I don't know if I can," she whispered. Her voice was small, almost lost in the noise of the festival. Kofi smiled softly, his eyes full of warmth. "You can," he said simply. "I will be with you. You are brave, and today is a day to celebrate that bravery." His calm confidence gave Amina a small spark of courage, and for the first time that day she felt a little stronger. Slowly she placed her hand in his, and together they moved into the center of the festival square. The music shifted as if to welcome them, the drumbeats steady and encouraging. Amina's heart pounded in her chest, but she focused on Kofi's hand, the steady rhythm, and the warm smile that never left his face. Step by step, she began to move with him, following the rhythm, letting the music guide her. The villagers noticed immediately. Some paused, unsure of what to do, while others whispered quietly. But Kofi did not care about the whispers. He moved with confidence, gently guiding Amina, showing her that she belonged in the center of the celebration. He wanted the villagers to see her, not as someone to be pitied or whispered about, but as someone brave and full of heart. Amina felt a wave of nervousness and excitement, but she also felt a small sense of freedom she had not felt before. As they danced, Kofi spoke softly so Amina could hear him. "You are not defined by your hair or by what others see," he said. "True beauty comes from your heart, from your courage, and from the way you treat others. Everyone should see that in you." Amina looked at him, her eyes filling with emotion. She had heard kind words before, but never so directly, never so clearly, and never in front of so many people. For the first time she felt valued for who she truly was. The villagers began to notice the change. Some whispers turned into quiet admiration. Children stopped their games and watched, fascinated by the young girl dancing so confidently beside the prince. The older villagers too could see the courage in her movements. They saw her smile, the way she held her head high, and the way Kofi's gentle guidance allowed her to shine. Slowly the mood of the crowd shifted. Instead of whispers of judgment, there were nods of approval, quiet claps, and smiles of recognition. Amina felt warmth spread through her chest. The music rose again and Kofi twirled her lightly, her scarf fluttering in the breeze. Laughter and joy bubbled from Amina, a sound she had not heard from herself in many months. She felt lighter, as if the fear that had weighed her down for so long was melting away. The villagers' smiles and applause encouraged her to continue dancing, step by step, rhythm by rhythm. With each movement she gained more confidence, and with each look from Kofi she felt safe. Kofi spoke again, his voice carrying to the crowd just enough for people to hear. "See everyone," he said, "this girl is brave. Her courage is more beautiful than any decoration, more powerful than any cloth, and brighter than any light we could hang today. Her heart is strong and her spirit is kind. That is what makes her shine." The villagers' eyes widened. They realized how often they had judged her without understanding her strength, how many times they had whispered instead of offering friendship. Slowly the whispers disappeared, replaced by nods, smiles, and quiet cheers. Amina could hardly believe what she was hearing. She looked around at the crowd and saw faces she had once feared, now showing respect and admiration. Even some of the children who had once stared or whispered now clapped and smiled at her. She felt something she hadn't felt in a long time: acceptance. Her heart swelled with emotion. She wanted to cry, but the tears were happy tears, filled with relief and joy. She realized that bravery could change the way people saw her. She realized that one person's belief in her could make a world of difference. The dance continued, the music flowing smoothly, and Amina moved with a newfound confidence. She forgot about the stares that might still exist on the edge of the crowd. She focused on the rhythm, the warmth of Kofi's hand, and the sense of celebration around her. She noticed the colors of the festival, the smiles on the villagers' faces, and the bright sunlight that seemed to highlight her every movement. It was as if the entire village had shifted to embrace her presence rather than judge it. Kofi continued to speak to her gently, reminding her of the courage she had carried for so long. "You have come far," he said. "And today you are showing everyone the strength that has always been inside you. Remember this moment, Amina. Remember how brave you are." She nodded, her eyes shining. For the first time she could truly feel the power of her own courage, the beauty that came from within, and the joy of being accepted for who she really was. By the time the dance ended, the villagers had gathered around to celebrate her bravery. They clapped, cheered, and some even bowed slightly in respect. Amina's heart was full. She had faced her fear, stood in the center of the village, and discovered that courage and kindness could shine brighter than any fear or judgment. Kofi smiled at her, his eyes full of pride and warmth. "You have done wonderfully," he said. "Never forget that your heart is what makes you strong and beautiful." Amina felt a deep sense of gratitude toward him. She had never imagined that the prince would not only dance with her but also speak so openly about her strength and value. She realized that kindness could change people's hearts, and courage could change the way they saw her. It was a lesson she would carry forever. As the festival continued, Amina found herself talking to villagers she had once feared. She laughed with children, helped a woman arrange her fruit stand, and even offered advice to a young girl about tying a scarf. The acceptance she felt was overwhelming and wonderful. For the first time she felt like she truly belonged in her village, not because of her hair, but because of the person she was inside. As the sun began to set, painting the sky with oranges and pinks, Amina sat for a moment on a nearby bench, watching the happy villagers around her. She held her head high and smiled softly. The festival had ended, and the village slowly returned to its usual quiet rhythm. Stalls were packed away, lanterns were taken down, and the laughter of children faded into soft footsteps heading home. Yet, the memory of the day stayed in the hearts of everyone who had witnessed it. Among them was Amina, who walked along the familiar path to her small mud house, her heart light and her steps steady. She had come far that day, not just through the crowded festival square, but through the fear that had lived in her for months. She had faced whispers, stares, and her own doubts, and she had found something she had never felt before: true confidence. As she walked, Amina thought about the dance she had shared with Kofi. She remembered the feeling of his hand in hers, warm and steady, guiding her through the steps. She remembered his words about bravery, beauty, and the value of the heart. Each memory made her chest swell with pride. For the first time she realized that courage was not something that came from others noticing her, it came from within her. The strength she carried in her heart, the kindness she showed to the world, and the patience she had learned to have with herself were what truly made her shine. The villagers had watched her during the festival. Some of them had whispered at first, unsure of what to think. But as they saw her move confidently, as they listened to Kofi speak so warmly about her courage, something shifted in their hearts. People began to notice that Amina was more than her appearance. They began to admire her quiet strength, her gentle smile, and the way she held herself with dignity despite the challenges she faced. Parents whispered to their children, reminding them that kindness and courage were more important than what someone looked like. Friends told each other that they had misjudged her, and even those who had avoided her before felt inspired to be more accepting. Amina could sense this change. As she walked through the paths lined with small houses, she saw villagers nodding to her, smiling, and some even waving. She no longer felt invisible. She felt part of her community, a young girl whose courage had been recognized and whose heart had been seen. The realization filled her with a warmth that made her smile softly to herself. She thought about the days she had spent by the river, the hours she had walked alone, and the times she had felt the sting of whispers. Each of those moments had brought her to this point, and she felt grateful for her own patience and determination. As the sun began to set, painting the sky with shades of gold and orange, Amina approached her home. Her mother was sitting near the doorway, a basket of freshly picked vegetables beside her. She looked up and smiled warmly as Amina approached. "How was the festival, my child?" her mother asked gently. Amina beamed. "It was wonderful," she said, her voice soft but full of excitement. "I danced and everyone saw me. I felt brave. I felt accepted." Her mother's eyes filled with joy. She knew her daughter had grown in ways that could not be measured, that this day had given Amina something far more valuable than gifts or food. It had given her confidence. Inside the small house, Amina placed her scarf carefully on a hook by the door. She looked at herself in the mirror above the basin. Her bare head reflected softly in the fading light, but she no longer saw weakness. She saw a girl who had faced her fears, who had stepped into the world with courage, and who had earned the respect and admiration of her community. She touched her head gently and whispered to herself, "I am strong. I am brave. I am enough." The words felt true in a way they never had before. They were no longer wishes or hopes, they were facts she could carry in her heart. That night, as the village quieted and the stars shone above, Amina went to the river once more. The water was calm and clear, reflecting the moon and the stars in a peaceful shimmer. She sat on her favorite rock, letting her feet dangle over the edge, and remembered everything that had happened that day. She thought of Kofi, who had believed in her when she doubted herself. She thought of the villagers who had finally begun to see her as she was, not just as a girl without hair. And she thought of herself, and the courage that had carried her through the fear and into acceptance. The river seemed to sparkle brighter that night, as if sharing in her joy and pride. Amina reflected on what had truly made the day special. It was not the music, the food, or even the decorations. It was the acknowledgement of her heart, her strength, and her spirit. Kofi's kindness had been a guiding light, showing her that sometimes, one person's belief in you can change everything. But she also realized that the bravery had come from her own choices. The choice to step forward, to trust, and to dance despite the fear. The river, the stars, and the quiet night seemed to nod in agreement. The next day, the village slowly returned to its normal rhythm, but Amina noticed something different in the way people greeted her. Children waved without hesitation, neighbors smiled, and even some elders who had once avoided her approached to speak kindly. She realized that her courage had not only changed how she saw herself but also how others saw her. She understood that true confidence was contagious. It inspired others to act with kindness and acceptance. Amina felt proud that she had played a part in making her village a better, gentler place. Kofi continued to visit the village paths, greeting the people, sharing stories, and checking on Amina from time to time. He never forced words or attention on her, but his calm presence reminded her that she was valued. Each time they met, Amina felt a little more confident, a little stronger, and a little braver. She began to understand that confidence did not mean never feeling fear. It meant continuing to move forward even when fear was present. Each step she took, whether to the river, to her garden, or into the center of a crowd, was a small victory that built her strength. Amina also began to see the beauty in small acts. When she helped a neighbor carry firewood, she noticed the gratitude in their eyes. When she laughed with children playing near the river, she felt joy in sharing kindness. When she tended to her flowers in the garden, she recognized the patience and love it took to nurture life. Each moment reminded her that courage and heart were more important than appearances, and that small acts of bravery could create ripples of happiness in the world around her. Over the next few weeks, Amina found herself walking taller, speaking more confidently, and feeling more connected to her village. The fear that had once shadowed her steps had lessened, replaced by pride and hope. She understood that her hair, or lack of it, did not define her. What defined her was her courage, her kindness, and her willingness to face the world with honesty and openness. Kofi's belief in her had sparked this realization, but she knew that it was her own determination that made the change real. As the seasons changed, Amina continued her routines, walking to the river, tending to her garden, and helping her neighbors. She smiled often, laughed freely, and shared her courage with others who might feel afraid or excluded. Villagers began to seek her advice, ask for her help, and look to her as an example of bravery and strength. Children who once whispered now admired her, and adults who once doubted now respected her. Amina realized that acceptance did not come only from others. It came from knowing and embracing her own worth, and then allowing that worth to shine outward. One evening, as she watched the sun set behind the hills, painting the sky with gold and pink, Amina thought about everything she had learned. She thought about fear, courage, acceptance, and the power of kindness. She realized that life would always bring challenges, whispers, and moments of doubt. But she also knew that she carried something stronger within her, an unshakable spirit, a kind heart, and the confidence that came from seeing her own value. She smiled softly and whispered, "I am brave. I am strong. I am enough." Amina walked home that evening with her head held high. She passed neighbors who smiled, children who waved, and friends who greeted her warmly. She felt connected to the village in a way she had never felt before. The festival had ended, but its lessons lived on in her heart. She understood that courage was not a one-time act. It was a journey built step by step, choice by choice, day by day. And now, Amina was ready to walk that journey with confidence, knowing that she was seen, valued, and loved for who she truly was. As she entered her small home, she felt a deep sense of peace. The river had listened, the stars had watched, the festival had celebrated her courage, and Kofi had shown her the power of kindness. But most importantly, she had discovered her own strength. She knew that her journey was far from over, but she also knew that she could face anything with her heart leading the way. And so, Amina closed her eyes that night with a smile on her lips and warmth in her heart. She knew that no matter what the world said, her courage and spirit would always make her shine. The villagers would remember this day for years, not because of the festival itself, but because of the bravery and beauty they had witnessed in her. And Amina would remember it forever, as the day she truly found herself.